Welcome everyone to another episode on how to break into tech. Today we have with us Amanda Skaar, and the title of the podcast is Building a Career That Actually Means Something. So I'm super excited to have you. Thank you so much, and welcome to GoGoTechie. Every time I check on your career, I see a career with a lot of passion and at the same time a very successful non-linear career, right? Which is something that I absolutely adore. So tell us a little bit more about who is Amanda.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Pilar. I'm so excited about where you've taken this as well, and passionate about being able to pass it on because many people have helped me out in my career. But I'm essentially someone who had a chance to start work in tech, but from a policy place first and foremost. So I had the chance to work in a very international organization with more than 100 different offices around the world, and focused a lot on policy within tech and how tech can do good. So I think maybe what you see as a red thread in terms of what I've tried to pursue after is finding a company that actually aligns with that and works to essentially create connections or create opportunities for people around the world using technology. So I guess what I do is I am working in partnerships at Stripe, and have also had the chance to work similar to you at Google prior to that, and really excited to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. If we didn't meet back then in our when I was working at tech in that terrace in Madrid, if you had to explain me who you are at a dinner party or back at that terrace without using your LinkedIn title, what would you say?
I would say that I am someone who helps build partnerships so that people can use infrastructure that helps either businesses or people get paid. So a lot of times people haven't heard about Stripe or where I work, and so that's typically how I try to break it down. Essentially, technology that enables people to get paid around the world.
Perfect. Thank you so much. When you look back at everything that you have achieved, everything that you have done, starting with IE, Google, Stripe, and then we will be talking also about Afroclimate, a little bit of angel investing. Do you see a clear threat? Did you have everything sorted out, or the growth was more organic than it looks from the outside?
I think no one has it figured out, and I'd probably be the first one to say I still don't. It's always funny how your perspective changes based on where you are. But I think for me, I would say that it has been a very organic path where I've stayed curious and tried to essentially go places where I can learn. And so I think the first chance to do that was when I chose to study in Paris. So I wanted to go to an American university, but I still wanted to learn a new language and stay close to European culture. And so the American University of Paris is similar to IE, very international place, not that big. So it was easy to build a community in a very international city. And I think also opening up that world from being in France and getting connections to so many different places because people are moving in from around the world into Paris was also kind of an enabler for me to go and pursue my first, career opportunity. It was actually a really good friend of mine from LA who I was studying with, who sat me down and wrote an application to the International Chamber of Commerce. Even though the application required that you would have a master's, she was like, you need to put into this application that your professional qualifications way outweigh your academic requirements. And so I think people helping you out and making you see the opportunities and giving you that first experience is obviously what enabled me to first work at the International Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, that's fascinating. When we do career orientation, especially focused in early graduates, a lot of people, I would say above 80%, they don't have a clear roadmap. And I always tell them I'm 37 and I still don't. But the truth that you just said is being curious, being open to new opportunities, making connections, learning from other people is what actually puts the pieces of the puzzle buck, and that's how you create a very successful non-linear career. So I always felt that watch out, always listen to new opportunities, always be keen to meet different people, because people are the ones that are just gonna make you the way. So that would be one very good advice. Thank you for that. Was there anything about almost 10 years ago when you worked for the International Chamber of Commerce? What did you do there? What was your actual day to day?
So I first started as an intern and working closely with someone who's still there today and became, you know, a leader within the organization. So it was very much a place where you know, everyone around you would foster your career growth and give you exciting opportunities. So I remember just within my first 6 months, I had the chance to go to UN conferences in Geneva. I also had the chance to go to the UN in New York and essentially just help out with the organization of important events for the various commissions and company members that we would have. And so obviously to be well prepared to, you know, facilitate an agenda or to facilitate email communications around those like major events, you'd need to deep dive quite like deeply into the topics that you were covering. So one area could be environmental policy, and then the next month you would be looking at digital trade policy. And so essentially just understanding a little bit like what are the global governance frameworks that impact businesses, both small and big, and what is it that we're advocating for to make, you know, business easier around the world so that you can facilitate cross-border trade and enable small businesses to have the same opportunities as big ones. So a lot of the work was like essentially focused on communicating effectively, advocating for something and influencing. And I think that's something that I also was able to bring with me into future roles.
Into your career.
Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest takeaway that you could say was communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. And was there anything like communication, but in your chapter at IE, was that something that, you know, that surprised you, that you took as a very important learning for the rest of your career?
I think that when I had spent a few years at the International Chamber of Commerce, I realized that while, you know, you're working with nonprofits, governments, and businesses, I found that the private sector was very much like the area where we saw the most progress or the most action being taken, because there's, you know, monetization like efforts that come into play. There's essentially, you know, capital being deployed for solutions. And so I saw examples of, you know, both like Meta at the time, but also Google and a few other like companies, including UPS and DHL, were super engaged in like essentially creating opportunities for individual entrepreneurs around the world. And I think what enticed me about IE as well was the fact that I had for the first time in my life exposure not just to the French speaking part of the business world, but also increasingly worked with like the International Chamber of Commerce in Mexico or Argentina. And so I thought, you know, IE is perfect because it'll be kind of the door opener to also communicating with that part of the world. And so I think with the experience at IE, I had the chance to also join kind of community clubs such as IE Women in Business, and step up to do communications around like various events there. And you just had to learn basically like how do you set up an event page, how do you set up a website, how do you run social media and create like graphics, like stuff that I'd never obviously had as part of my education. But I think that's like what IE enables you to do. Like you become someone who can communicate, but also create tools that essentially you just figure out on the go. And obviously that serves you well when you have to then go into the workforce.
That's amazing. How did you transition from the jump at IE, right? Because you did a huge jump over there. You moved from IE to Google. How did you get there? Or, you know, how did the opportunity find you?
Mm-hmm. I think I had one kind of role model, and there's been very many over the years. But I think there was one Swedish girl who had spent time at the American University of Paris just a little bit before me, who I had seen went straight from AUP to Google. And then I realized that, okay, well, if someone with a bachelor degree is able to make it, like as long as I have this master degree, I need to do everything in my power to ultimately also put myself on the map to be potentially willing to go and work there. So I did like the classic, go through internal work portals, but also reach out to recruiters within the Dublin office. And I think like, obviously language skills help a lot when you're looking for your first job in tech. So I had the chance to basically connect with a few recruiters in tech companies, and then one of them was Google, and ultimately spent like a few months going through interview rounds, flying over there, and yeah, it's like it feels like far away, but it was a super exciting experience, and yeah.
Yeah. I remember Google basically like probably every day. I think it was the biggest, for me, the biggest professional experience I've ever had. And you probably agree with me that one of the best teams that you can be at, or one of the coolest things that you can do at Google, is to work for Google for Startups, right? So how is your role there? Because you did partner with LATAM, Africa, Europe. How do you explain that work to someone?
Yeah, I think the like another person that inspired me to do work within Google was someone named Alex Walden. She was at the time when I went to one of the UN conferences in Geneva. She was a speaker on behalf of Google and talking about kind of their various initiatives to support essentially human rights and governance within the tech space. And so when I knew that like there are various programs within Google, not just like the core ads business, I was very quickly motivated to join such an initiative given my past background in policy. But I also thought that, in order to get there, you also have to do the work to understand the core product and like how the business is driving revenue. So I did spend like a few years essentially just focusing on my core role. I think that's something that's typically lost on many, that like it's so exciting to jump on like 5 different directions and try to do everything at once. And I had really good coaches and managers within my team that helped me focus on kind of my core responsibility in selling first. And I think like it's changed over the years, but like selling is not a dirty word. It's like a very useful skill.
I love it. Like, and
Exactly.
here, especially in Spain, it's demonized. Like people think that sales as you remember the movie Matilda.
Yeah.
People associate sales with Danny DeVito selling used cars. It's very
Exactly.
demonized, and I think sales, especially now with AI, is one of the biggest, career developments that you can have. It's useful for everything. And at the end of the day, something that really surprises me is that people do not know the broadness of the sales experience, in the sense that account executive, SDR, and business development manager are obvious, but when you move into there, it's like partnerships, it's like operations. Fighting for a promotion inside a corporation is sales. Building a company is sales. So no matter how they identify the skills quality, is a huge skill set, and for me is a must in whatever career that you're pursuing.
100%. And I think like what you learn as well within complex sales and like technical sales is that you have to figure out something on the go. And if you don't have the answer, you need to go back and find out internally and then share an email or set up a new meeting to essentially explain it. And the more you explain it, the more you understand it yourself. And so I think like going back to your question on essentially how I could make the bridge from, working in like a pure sales function to also doing a 20% project within Google for Startups was very much that, like, first nailing your role, like making sure that you're focused and hitting your numbers, and then enjoying that, because I think like you need to obviously be enjoying your job to like stay motivated. But then also exploring those opportunities where you had the trust of your team or your manager to then go and pursue other interests, and like because you then talk about the fact that okay, I'm passionate about like this area of work within Google, it was no surprise when that time came along and like when there was an opportunity to then have a work focused on that. And it was during COVID, so it was the first time they were doing a Google for Startups program where focus on the sustainable development goals. We would look for startups around the world. So typically they would be focused on the accelerator hubs such as essentially Brazil, or I think there was one in Berlin and London, For the first time, we could like basically just spread our wings and just look for startups and founders everywhere. So yeah, my job was basically looking for those partners that could refer interesting founders in Latin America and Africa, and then worked closely with the team that was doing that 100% of their time.
I think that's the most fun thing I can ever imagine in the corporate world. What did it teach you about, how to scout founders, how to scout good ideas? What did it teach you about entrepreneurship, that journey?
I think there were certain themes that you were able to identify as kind of emerging, interesting programs. I know, for example, we saw Google for Startups like spin up one focused on cybersecurity after that had come up as an emerging theme in more broad kind of thematic founder remit. So I think just being able to kind of spot like what is something that is truly solving a problem, what is repetitive versus what has like a unique kind of solution to the problem. That was something that you could not necessarily gauge from like a first scout at the website, but you could have an initial screening call with founders and understand based on their background, based on like their experience, but also based on how much work or technology they deployed, how far along were they, and who should we take a bet on. And then ultimately, it's like a very big program. So part of the program is also being able to filter out over time who's motivated to stay the course, who's motivated to actually contribute within that period of time.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, congratulations on that. It sounds fascinating. Before we move into Stripe, I would like to ask you a question. What did you take personally or professionally from your Google experience? What's the best thing that you learned? In my case, it was a very good school and it gave me all the sales skill sets that I have been using since then. And also a sense of culture, a corporate culture that if I ever make it with my company, I would very much vision what they have done, right? Because I remember my times at Google as a very, very happy moment of my life. So yeah, a lot of learnings. What are yours? What changed you?
Yeah, what changed me the most was probably this like flexibility that was offered to really pursue like your passion, whether it's, within a specific, retail segment in your core job, or whether it's, somewhere where you want to get exposure, shadow people, get feedback and learn. I think it's like, to your point, it's a very good school where you're encouraged to get positive and constructive feedback so that you can grow and do better next time. But I also think like most fundamentally, like it was the first place I worked where I could just reach out to like colleague in Sao Paulo or someone in like the Nairobi office, and then you would immediately be connected to people that were building the culture that is unique to Google. And so I think that was very much something that I took with me, and like being able to lean on communities that have potentially a better answer than you might do. And so, yeah, I think that's like what, gave me also very much like an interest in this global infrastructure at Google. Obviously, it's like more on the marketing side. How do you enable businesses to be discovered? And then my interest in Stripe was very much also focused on how do you enable a very complex thing within payments for more than 100 countries. How do you essentially scale a solution that is typically reserved for kind of privileged developed countries, and how do you make that also work in other parts of the world? So that was my big motivation for joining Stripe.
Yeah, that's amazing. Plus, it sounds also very, very fun and very invigorating. Do you think the muscles that Google gave you, I mean, of course, they were useful for Stripe, but what are the muscles that you have strengthened within your position at Stripe?
I would say like prioritization is something that you learn when you handle multiple projects, but also various like sales cycles or seasonality or types of businesses, and being able to rigorously decide that you can't do it all, but you need to prioritize based on what you believe is the most immediate priority or the biggest opportunity. And so I think also at Stripe, like we are like by default resource constrained. I think most tech companies are and should be. But that also means that like you have to be quite ruthless in the way you prioritize and focus your time. And so that's something that I think we can all continue to work on, but it's something that I at least use every day and try to think of when I, in my day-to-day job.
Amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about also part of your fascinating career, Afroclimate. While building that, let's put it that way, official career, you were also an advisor at Afroclimate, right? Also, back then involved in angel investing, so in women leadership spaces. How do you manage that parallel life alongside your main job?
I think the like core kind of red thread or like the North Star that I had for myself when I also transitioned from Google to Stripe was that I really wanted to keep that focus on essentially staying connected to emerging markets where I'd met founders and like learned quite a lot from just understanding the solutions they were building and the problems they were trying to solve. So I took it upon myself to kind of deep dive a little bit further. I had done some thesis work in my bachelor on Madagascar and was really keen to understand like more generally in East Africa, like what were kind of the entrepreneurs to follow and how could you kind of get better connected with that ecosystem. And someone who helped me out with my thesis in 2014, 10 years later, started Afroclimate. And so I had the chance to basically reach out again on LinkedIn and congratulate her. And it so happened that she was looking for people who could support. And because I then had the experience with Google for Startups, setting up a program with partnerships around the world, it was a good fit. And so I've been super lucky to get that exposure and to be able to work with Nasima, who's the CEO, who's basically taken this from zero to launching a nonprofit that focuses on enabling climate entrepreneurship around East Africa. So that's essentially how that started. And I would say that like it has brought me a lot of like, I don't know if it's called balance, but it's definitely something that has kept me in check in terms of like making sure that I'm not just focused on my immediate kind of region or immediate kind of bubble, if you will, and that I can actually also better try to understand like what's going on in East Africa, like understand how climate solutions that we're building here in Europe could also be applicable there or vice versa. Things that are being built there, how can we scale them to more communities? And so that's been a really interesting experience, but also it's something that, to your point and how you're giving back with this career community, if I can leverage any of the skills that I've been very privileged to obtain over the like career trajectory that I've had to date, if I can translate that into essentially helping someone set up a website or essentially use some digital tools that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise, I think it's a very rewarding experience. And so being able to do that on the side is
I think one of the things that make you pursue things in the long term are specifically that, right? Like impact and purpose, and that's what's beautiful about everything that you have done. But one thing that I'm surprised but at the same time very happy and very proud. All your references are women, all of them you have mentioned, and that that makes me very happy. Going back to the ecosystem, it is very sad to see that we're still missing more references. In the founding ecosystem, at least in Spain, less than 3% of the new companies built are represented by women, and in the angel investment side is less than 7%. Right, so I acknowledge that it has evolved, that we have been changing things for the past 15 to 20 years, and we have new references, and that's amazing. But how could we create more impact? What is something that maybe is missing that we could do together?
I think that like what I've done, and this is kind of how I tick, I don't know if it's like a helpful thing for others, is I do find myself very much inspired by role models and being able to pursue or like follow paths that others have taken, because I think that if you don't have female role models who have done something untraditional or have a different perspective on life or have made it in a different region that you might not have access to, being humble and like leaning on them for advice is obviously one thing. But even just the starting point of, you know, being able to follow someone on LinkedIn, and essentially just like be reminded that, hey, this is actually possible. This is an alternative world that people are living, is a really passionate, like, obviously thing that I tend to do. I tend to read biographies or get inspired by people in the spaces that I want to enter into. And a funny thing that I discovered just late last night is I've been following your sister for probably 4 or 5 years. I had no idea, but Carmen, obviously, like with founding Coco, obviously, like socially invested, you know, VC. It's like there's very few examples of that, and especially also because of the Iberia, Latin America region that, you know, I wanted to focus more on at the time. Like that was a perfect example of someone that I wanted to basically follow and just see, like, you know, what are they talking about? What is the community within that space focused on? And so I think that's like, at least for me, been helpful, but it's helpful because other people are putting themselves out there and actually sharing their advice. And so I think in the same way, like we should continue to also raise our voice and like share our experience, as opposed to just feeling that, okay, this space is saturated or there's not enough women and I'm not going to raise my voice. Because ultimately there's going to be someone out there who wants to hear, you know, your opinion or wants to hear about your experience.
Absolutely.
And so continuing to share is probably like the key.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing things changing. In comparison with like 5 years, it's incredible. We go, but still the representation is very very low. But I see things. I see events and like women in tech. I see media. I see podcast. I see initiatives. For example, we built Calafia 3 years ago, and we're 20 women that built a business angel syndicate. The initial idea was to basically invest in Iberian female founders, but obviously that doesn't exist that often. So we changed it to Iberian tech. But for us, it's a huge plus if the founding team has a woman, and we actually, you know, look for that to give out our investment. So, and I think a lot of people are, you know, creating events, especially after the data, right? Like we perform better, like we're more sustainable. So regarding exactly. So yeah, I think things are changing a lot, and I have a lot of hope. But hopefully, we will do another podcast in less than 5 years, and we can debate about this, all the initiatives that have been going on. Now, moving into the last part of our conversation, which is something that a lot of GoGoTechies audience looks for, is you know, people watching this episode. They're trying to break into tech, okay, or make a pivot over their careers. I get a lot of students saying, "Listen, I want to break into tech. I don't know how to," or going outside the university, like I want to break into big tech or scale ups or startups, but I want to move into tech. What would you tell them? Like, because your profile obviously inspires them a lot, but they also feel intimidated, and that's something that you probably you have probably discovered this. Like people, you say Stripe or you say Google or you say Meta or you say TikTok, and they feel intimidated. And I always tell them, like, anyone can break into this type of companies. What would you tell them?
I would, you know, first and foremost start with like your value set and really go back to like what is it that's driving you to want to work in this space. It needs to be something genuinely exciting and something that you burn for. And so if you know that you've seen someone build an app and that's changed like something in their community, and so Lovable is really exciting as a company because of that, or you've seen firsthand how access to finance has been an issue growing up, and currency fluctuations have made it difficult for you to sustain a living. Like these kind of things might motivate you to work for a company like Stripe because you understand the value of essentially bridging infrastructure that was not there in the past to actually like bridging it to something that now exists today, and being able to actually contribute to that solution. Because I think something that probably recruiters more broadly look for is, some signal that you're keen to stay, not just for a year, and that it's not just for kind of some self-fulfilling aspect, but that it's actually also a place where you could establish yourself over time and really contribute to building a culture, but also building something for that company. And so I think that's something that maybe our generations like struggle with, like in terms of our impatience or always wanting to jump to the next thing. And especially now with AI, there are so many new companies emerging and everything feels, greener on the other side. So I think some way that you can position yourself to essentially just have longevity within that space would probably be my first advice. And I think it really is not like a linear path whatsoever. So if your path is changing from one day to another, where you have an opportunity to get experience within a smaller startup, and then you can use that experience to then prove that you have problem solving skills or that you've taken responsibility and been very customer centric. Those are the kind of skills that ultimately a bigger tech company would be looking for. And so also having that like track record of professional experience and showing up and being accountable, I think really matters. So it doesn't have to be your first ever graduate opportunity. It can be just somewhere along the way. And so
Absolutely. And
be...
I always tell the people that want to break into tech that I feel very proud of having done my career in tech, and I have many reasons to say that, but one specifically is that how tech companies look a lot into certain soft skills rather than experience and hard skills per se, because they're obviously willing to invest in you getting those hard skills by a huge onboarding process. But the soft skills that they look into are creativity, our resilience, our autonomy, our communication skills. What are, in your opinion, certain skills that Google or Stripe look into a candidate that are the most relevant? Because you said entrepreneurial mindset, and that for me is essential, especially now with AI. Critical thinking, communication, creativity, resilience. So all these things are very important for these companies.
Yeah, I think that like to some degree, proof of ownership and being able to navigate ambiguity is something that is important, because even the most like established large tech companies are seeing a lot of shifts and restructuring going on as well, based on what's the next big thing, or like what's the biggest revenue opportunity, and also increased competition. So I think with that, there needs to be some demonstration that you can also navigate that, or kind of step up to the challenge of learning new things or taking responsibility. I'd say that's something that I don't know if it's like something easy you can prove within a CV, but like basically showing or demonstrating examples of how you've been able to build a community, or drive an initiative, or hold a recurring event, or essentially bring in interesting speakers to IE or some other university, basically just spending time kind of driving something net new. I think that's really critical, like in a place where there will be shifting priorities, and there's also going to be need for co-creation. So I would say that's definitely one. And then I mentioned obviously prioritization, like being able to like make the tough decisions when it comes to not doing everything at once, but really kind of stack ranking based on what's more important, and fully dedicating time to that. And then finally, I think influencing is something that we don't necessarily have too many courses on this. We don't learn it, but something that you experience on the go and you get better at with external communications, whether it's like with a customer or a partner. I think this is something that's super critical. Like if you want to influence someone to hire you, or you want to influence someone to essentially promote you to a next job, or influence someone to advocate for you for a new project, or influence a partner or someone else externally. Really that's like work to find balance, like find what's important for, you know, one person and what's important for you, is something that I find really exciting with my current job. Like partnerships is obviously an area for Stripe. Like we wouldn't be anywhere if we weren't built on all the card network partnerships and
Yeah.
all the various payment methods that we work with and all the various, you know, products that we're supported with. And so I think that's where, yeah, I find a lot of joy in basically navigating like how you create value for, you know, merchants that we use with or work with, and then do that through partnerships. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. My last question of the interview or podcast or however we want to call it. If you could talk to the Amanda who was just starting at IE with no idea of what was coming, what would you tell her?
um, make the most out of not just like time in the classroom, but also with the people that you're with in your spare time. Like I think the people and the community that you build at university is something that's completely unique. Like there's also workplaces that are going to be, you know, that community kind of driver for you as much as, you know, some university place might have been. But for me, that was the most valuable thing, like being able to, you know, sit in a classroom with so many different people from different parts of the world and learn about both their previous experiences, but also being able to follow them. I think I mentioned to you earlier that, like, you know, someone not in my immediate class, but someone who I was at IE with at the same time. We were in the Women in Business Club together. We're now still, you know, going to various running events around the world and like doing that together, and just like being able to keep that community and keep learning from people that have nothing to do with your day-to-day job, but that can still inspire you is like the most valuable thing in the world. So that
Yeah,
would be my advice.
I couldn't agree more. Like finding people that can inspire you and can guide you, and that you can like squeeze your brain out of absorbing all their learnings, I think is the most intelligent thing that you can do at the early of your careers. Like surround yourself with incredible people, because those are the ones that are gonna take you far. Um, so yeah, Amanda, thank you so much. And yeah, let's be in touch, and let's keep talking about this.
Yes, I
Thank you so
appreciate you so
much.
much for setting this up, and thank you for having me.